Jesse's and Christine's story starts with a simple but big idea, one that's both exciting and deeply personal. They've got this quiet 8-acre piece of land out in northern Ontario, in the Boreal forest, and they've decided to build an A-frame cabin there themselves. Not hire anyone, actually build it with their own hands. The place is completely peaceful, surrounded by trees, the kind of spot where you can actually hear yourself think. But before any of the fun parts began, they had to deal with the less glamorous work. The fall before construction, they focused on getting the basics in place, digging trenches for water and electricity, putting in a big septic tank, and building a raised septic field. It was messy, heavy work, but it was necessary. Now, once the concrete footings are in and set, they move on to building the foundation up using sonotubes. The footings already have rebar sticking out, so they tie in more rebar to create one continuous structure that runs through the columns. The sonotubes are filled with concrete, and brackets are installed with precision for the next steps. They continue working on assembling the outer beams. Before anything goes up, the edges get coated with a moisture protection liquid. Then the beams are secured onto the brackets. The process is methodical, fitting pieces together, tacking them in place, and getting everything ready for the final fastening. To keep everything straight, Jesse runs a string line between the beams to ensure that the middle beam lines up perfectly with the outer ones. Precision really matters here, because even a small misalignment now can turn into bigger issues later. The next big challenge is lifting the first A-frame truss into place. It's one of those moments that feels exciting, but also a bit tense. Now it's all about height, balance, and moving carefully step by step. Once the truss stands upright, they brace it firmly so it doesn't shift or wobble. And as soon as the first one is in place, their focus already shifts to the next. They start thinking about how to make the process smoother, faster, and a bit more efficient for the ones that follow. They add temporary supports again, go over their movements more carefully, and tweak the rigging setup to make the next lifts go a bit smoother. Even with that, it's still not simple. The frame shifts under its own weight, the top sags slightly, and the base doesn't want to line up the way it should. As more A-frames go up, something starts to change. The whole structure begins to settle and stabilize. Once the frames are standing, they get tied together, which cuts down on movement and adds a lot more rigidity. And that shifts everything. What felt a bit fragile and uncertain at first slowly starts to feel solid, real, and intentional. The sheeting process starts with OSB panels. They begin installing them carefully, working from the lower sections of the A-frame upward. The idea is to get the structure covered fairly quickly, so it's protected from the weather, but still slow enough to keep everything accurate. As more sheets go on, the whole structure starts to stiffen up in a noticeable way. Every panel they nail in pulls the frame together a bit more, cutting down movement and adding strength across the entire build. Once the lower walls are secured, Jesse shifts his focus up to the roof. He starts laying down synthetic underlayment across the sloped surface. It's not like the old tar paper. It's lighter, easier to work with, and more breathable. But as he moves higher, the difficulty increases. Ladders aren't really enough anymore, and the steep angle of the A-frame means every move has to be slow and deliberate. Working up there turns into a constant balance between getting things done efficiently and staying safe. So he builds custom roof jacks. These metal supports are shaped to match the pitch of the roof and hold solid planks, creating a stable platform to stand on. With this setup, they manage to keep sheeting upward without breaking their rhythm as the structure climbs higher. Soon they're working on the upper rows of OSB, where everything feels a bit more exposed, a bit less forgiving. Each panel has to be guided into place carefully on that steep pitch, and every step up demands full attention. Bit by bit, each sheet brings the cabin closer to being fully enclosed. What was once just an open frame standing in the forest is now slowly turning into a solid, weather-tight shell. They're installing a standing seam metal roof. The cabin rises about 35 feet, and there's a real sense of doubt hanging over the job. Not just about getting it right, but about something more basic, whether the two of them can actually handle a system like this on their own. Still, the metal is already there, stacked and waiting. And at this point, there's no turning back. The roof panels show up long and heavy, 35 feet in length, 16 inches wide, stacked and ready to go. They're designed to lock together cleanly with no exposed fasteners, which makes for a sleek, durable roof. But that kind of system doesn't leave much room for mistakes. Once it's in place, it's in place. They take their time getting the first panel lined up just right with the starter strip at the base. This part is the most critical, so there's no rushing it. Once it finally clicks into place, everything else follows from that first move. It basically sets the line for every other panel that comes after it. The main challenge is to control a 35-foot sheet of metal without bending or twisting it. It's long, awkward, and unforgiving. And when it's finally up there and stepping back to look at the roof taking shape, that's when the scale of the whole project really hits. Jesse starts reinforcing the floor joists depending on how much weight they'll need to carry later on. Along the outer load-bearing edges, he installs triple laminated beams, while the interior sections are reinforced with double laminations. With the framing done, the next challenge lies underneath the cabin. The crawl space becomes their new workspace as they start attaching pressure-treated plywood to the underside of the joists. This layer will hold the insulation in place, basically creating a sealed cavity for the floor system. And it's not easy work. The space is tight, the ground is damp, and every sheet of plywood has to be lifted, positioned, and fastened overhead. It's slow, uncomfortable, and a lot tougher than it looks. In northern Ontario, temperatures can drop to -40, and without proper insulation, it doesn't matter how well the rest of the cabin is built. The cold will find its way in. The couple goes with mineral wool insulation. It's fire-resistant, doesn't hold water, and pests tend to leave it alone. Compared to fiberglass, it keeps its shape better and holds up over time, which makes a big difference in a place like this. They install it in layers, packing the joist cavities nice and full. Doubling it up gives them a much higher thermal rating, so the floor can actually hold on to heat, even when it's freezing outside. It's still dusty work, but more manageable than expected. It doesn't irritate the skin like fiberglass does, though it still takes a bit of care while handling it. Generally, warm air always tries to move toward cold, and without a barrier, it escapes quickly. A well-insulated floor keeps that heat inside, makes the space more comfortable, and also cuts down on how much energy it takes to warm the place up in the first place. To keep moisture out of the floor system, they lay down a thick vapor barrier across the floor. The material itself is heavy-duty, rolled out in wide sheets that stretch across the entire surface. Once it's all in place, it creates a continuous protective layer between the warm living space above and the cold air underneath. The final step is installing the plywood subfloor. Each tongue and groove sheet clicks into the next, locking together and creating a solid surface underfoot. As they move across the structure, the change is immediate. No more careful steps along narrow joists. Now there's a flat, continuous floor to walk on. It's easy to pause for a moment and picture it. Where the kitchen might go, where the bed will sit, how the space slowly starts to come together day by day. Even the small, practical details begin to stand out now, like cutting openings for water and electrical lines. To protect the incoming utilities, they start building a small, boxed enclosure out of pressure-treated plywood. This little box will act like a sealed channel, guiding both the electrical conduit and the water line into the cabin. With winters this harsh, even a single gap isn't an option. Everything has to be fully sealed and insulated, no exceptions. The idea of keeping the utilities clean, organized, and well protected comes together, along with the subfloor fully insulated and ready for finishing. Everything is finally transitioning from the freezing conditions outside into the warmer, protected space of the cabin interior. After finishing the insulation, vapor barrier, and plywood flooring, Jesse and Christine move on to the next big stage of the A-frame build, framing the end walls. It starts with the bottom sill, which sets the base for everything that follows. Everything starts with a moisture barrier laid over the plates to seal and protect wood underneath. They build up the main front beam, stacking multiple beams together and fastening them carefully so it can carry the load above. A double top plate goes on next, along with matching side plates, tying the whole thing together into a solid, stable frame. The framing isn't just about structure, it's where the cabin really starts to take shape as a home. Every stud, every opening, every connection has a purpose. This is the stage where decisions become permanent, because everything built now defines where the doors will open, where the windows will bring in light, and how the living space will actually feel. Not everything goes perfectly the first time. While framing the header above the front door, they notice something is missing. Some of the required king studs didn't get included in the original layout, so work has to stop for a moment. Parts of the wall come back apart, and they rework those sections to bring everything in line with the structural plans. It's not ideal, but it's part of the process. In the end, it's less of a setback and more of a correction. Moments like this are a reminder that building in real time always involves adjustments, figuring things out on the spot, while still making sure everything stays solid and structurally sound. With the front wall complete, the focus shifts to the back of the cabin. And this is where a detail that wasn't obvious before comes into play: blocking between the trusses. Without them, there wouldn't be anything strong enough to fasten into, so this step ends up being more important than it first looks. It's the kind of hidden work. This side of the structure works a bit differently because there's a loft above it. Instead of building a separate beam like at the front, the loft joists themselves end up acting as the main support system for the wall below. Just like the front, the back wall still needs to be built up with a sill, top plate, and side plates to set the full framing outline. These pieces define the perimeter of the wall and lock in all the key connection points for everything that comes later. Jesse covers the loft floor with plywood, turning it into a solid, usable surface. Up until this point, it's just open joists, but once the sheets go down, everything changes. It becomes a proper floor, something stable to stand on, move around, and actually work from. It adds another layer to the cabin, both physically and visually, and makes the whole build feel more complete. The focus then shifts up to the second story of the back wall. There's still a lot of weight coming down through this area, so the framing around the opening has to be solid. This is where a large window will sit, taking up most of the wall. They take their time measuring and marking everything out, making sure it all lines up exactly as planned. The sheeting starts down at the bottom corner, where full sheets can go in with barely any cutting. They're using OSB again, the same material as on the roof. Each sheet has to land exactly where it should, especially over the studs. If a seam doesn't line up, Jesse and Christine stop and fix it before fastening anything down. It's one of those details that's easy to overlook, but it matters later. Even something as small as leaving a slight gap between the sheets is important. That little bit of space gives the material room to expand and contract with moisture, so it doesn't end up warping or buckling down the line. Windows and doors add a whole new level of complexity. Instead of cutting everything into smaller pieces, the goal is to keep the sheathing in full sheets as much as possible. Bigger, continuous sections around openings make the wall a lot stronger than a bunch of smaller patches. To make that work, they lift full sheets into place first and trace the openings directly onto them. It's actually quicker and more accurate than trying to measure everything ahead of time. Once the lines are marked, the sheets come back down, get cut, and then go right back up, this time fitting cleanly around the windows and doors. Row by row, the sheathing works its way up. The first few rows go on easily from the ground, but as things get higher, that changes pretty quickly. At that point, the lift becomes essential. What would have been slow, awkward work on ladders turns into something much more manageable. Thanks to the lift and everything learned from working on the back wall, the front wall goes up much faster. Even with all the openings to work around, the process feels more efficient this time. There are still a few tight spots where smaller filler pieces can't be avoided, but they're placed carefully so the strength of the wall isn't compromised. By the second day, the finish line is finally in sight. Just a few last pieces remain up on the upper sections, and the whole thing is about to come together. For the first time, the cabin is fully wrapped in solid panels, and that changes everything. It no longer feels open or temporary. The hardest part is finally done. The house is up, the walls are standing, the roof is on, and the main structure is in place. There's still plenty of work ahead, but the big milestone is past. The project moves into a new phase, one that's less about structure and more about protecting everything that's already been built and making it livable. That's where the weather barrier comes in. It's applied over the sheathing to stop wind and water from getting into the walls, while still letting moisture from inside escape. Without it, rain, snow, and even cold air could work their way in and slowly damage the structure. At the same time, the focus shifts outward to something more personal, the front deck. It brings a different kind of energy to the project. It's easy to picture slow mornings with coffee, quiet evenings, and simply sitting outside, taking in the surroundings while still feeling at home. At this point, it's less about structure and more about the life that will unfold here. The deck is designed to span a full 24 feet, extending evenly out from the center of the cabin. To make that happen, they laminate sections of lumber together, building up the strength needed to carry the load. As the frame comes together, blocking is added where it's needed, tightening everything up and keeping the structure solid. Jesse and Christine add a border around the deck, and it ends up making a bigger difference than expected. That simple detail gives the edges a clean, finished look and makes the whole thing feel more intentional. Of course, it means going back and adjusting some earlier work. A few boards get recut, and extra blocking is added underneath to properly support the new layout. Extra steps are taken to protect the deck framing from moisture. The beams get treated first with a moisture-resistant coating, giving the wood an added layer of protection. After that, a layer of ice and water membrane is applied over the key areas, wrapping across the joists and beams. What was just a bare frame starts turning into a solid, walkable surface. The deck boards go down one by one, and with each piece, the change is easy to see. They pay close attention to spacing, knowing the wood will expand and contract over time. Some boards are set tighter, others get a bit more room, all to keep the lines looking even and consistent across the entire deck. Another major milestone arrives, installing the windows and doors. Getting them into place isn't easy. They're heavy and awkward, and every movement has to be slow and controlled just to keep everything aligned. Next comes the front door, and this one takes a bit more effort. With extra hands on site, it turns into careful coordination, lifting, guiding, and slowly adjusting it into place. Every edge and corner has to line up just right before anything gets secured. The gaps are filled in with spray foam and tape. The foam expands into every small space, sealing up the edges around the windows and door, while tape is used to cleanly cover and secure the joints. Meanwhile, the biggest challenge of the build so far comes with the loft window. It's massive, about 6 feet wide and 7 feet tall, and the triple pane glass makes it extremely heavy. Getting it into position takes a completely different approach. Up until now, everything about the cabin has been focused on the front, but once the space at the back is really looked at, it's clear it can't just stay as it is before the back deck can even begin. The foundation needs to be extended so it can properly support the load. So the next step is adding 3 more concrete sonotubes. Each one is lowered into place, adjusted carefully, and checked again and again to make sure it's level. Rebar is driven into each tube for strength, and then concrete is poured to lock everything in. To secure everything properly, beam brackets are set into the concrete using anchoring epoxy. Some of the hardware isn't perfectly matched at first, so a bit of improvisation comes into play. The brackets get wet set into the concrete and carefully adjusted as it starts to cure. The final step in this phase is tying everything together with laminated plates that span across the joints. Each piece is cut to cover about 4 feet total, overlapping on both sides of every splice so the load gets spread out properly. As each layer goes on, the difference is easy to feel. The structure tightens up and becomes noticeably more rigid. What started as separate sections of framing slowly turns into one continuous heavy-duty beam system. Even without the finishing layers in place, the strength is already obvious. Before any decking goes down, the structure needs protection from rainwater and moisture. Along the back wall and doorway, flashing is shaped and installed. Any water that reaches the surface is directed outward and away, rather than getting trapped underneath where it could cause damage over time. A waterproofing membrane is laid across key areas, using the same approach as on the front deck. The membrane and flashing work together as a layered system, sealing things up and guiding water away from the structure. This step is especially important in a climate like this, where moisture can slowly do real damage to exposed wood over time if it's not properly protected. With the structure fully locked in, beams reinforced, joists and blocking secured, and waterproofing in place, the deck boards finally go down across the surface. Each board is set one by one, adjusted carefully to keep the spacing even and the edges clean. There's a rhythm to it now. Set it, align it, fasten it, move on to the next. Small adjustments happen constantly just to keep everything looking straight and intentional. As more boards are added, the surface starts to change fast. All the openings are prepped in advance for installation. Waterproofing is applied, and the surfaces are shimmed and adjusted so the frames will sit properly. The conditions aren't ideal. Snow and cold make everything a bit harder to work through, but the focus stays the same. The goal is to have everything ready so the actual installation can go quickly. With the A-frame fully closed in and winter setting in outside, the focus finally moves indoors. The first step inside is installing roof baffles along the rafters, running the full length from the bottom all the way up to the peak. These baffles create a continuous ventilation channel, allowing air to move freely through the roof assembly. The key idea here is ventilation. By keeping an air gap behind the insulation, moisture is prevented from getting trapped inside the roof. Air can travel from bottom to top continuously, keeping the assembly dry while still maintaining strong thermal performance. As the insulation rolls start going in, the reality of the build really sets in. The cabin moves into a new phase. It's no longer just a shell standing against the weather. It starts to feel more like an interior space. From here on, the work shifts to a wired finishing, running heat, wiring everything in, and slowly turning it all into a proper livable space. And all of it happens while winter keeps building up outside. The journey isn't over yet. This is just the start of a new chapter. The structure is standing, but turning it into a real home still lies ahead, with all the interior work, finishing details, and personal touches still to come. So, it's worth staying tuned and following along on the creator's channel. The next episodes will focus on the interior build, where the cabin gradually transforms from a raw shell into a warm, lived-in space. There's still a long road ahead, where empty rooms begin to turn into a real home. If this build sparked your curiosity, stay with us. There's always more being created. Subscribe to follow the next project and let us know what you'd like to see brought to life next.